Texture, texture, and more texture. I love putting texture onto a background or onto a focal point. It just adds so much interest, whether it's visual texture or whether it's actual physical texture that you can touch. That's what makes mixed media art so interesting and so wonderful. We've done texture using gesso through a stencil and have had different effects with that. We've achieved texture by using tags, ripped up tags from packaging and stuff, and gotten different texture. I've got texture by using paper towels in different ways, kitchen towel, whether colored before or painted afterwards, cut into different shapes. We got texture using saran wrap or plastic wrap with acrylic paints and other paints. And depending on what product you use, you're going to get visual, absolutely, and sometimes physical as well. And you get some lovely, lovely effects. So today we are going to look at another way of achieving texture. And it is one of the techniques that I have used a considerable amount. So I'm just going to zoom out, and I have a few samples where I've used this technique. Now, you can see the texture, the wrinkles, okay? So this is using texture using something that we've already talked about, but we were talking more for pattern, using tissue paper, tracing paper, that kind of stuff. But now we're going to turn it up a lot because we're going to deliberately try to get this texture and then bring it out. I've got a few more samples for you. Oops. There, we can see the texture that's there. And what is that? That is a coffee filter that has been crinkled and applied and then treated with different products to bring out that texture. And it adds. And in this case, it's used for a part of the page, not the whole page. More texture. I don't know what we have on this one. And you can see, whoops, the lovely texture. And again, this is tissue paper that has been crinkled and put on. And we're going to talk about the variations with that. Then there's the texture that we created on this page. And if I zoom in, you can see the texture that's there, that catches, you know, when you bring it out. So we're going to play with that, and we are going to do our tags and try put on a variety of different things onto our tags where we can get different texture. And we're going to adhere it with either Mod Podge, you can use matte gel, and you can even use white gesso, just like we did when we put the tags on. And each one's going to take product just a little bit different afterwards, and that's going to change the effect. So I'm going to get started. And so the first tag that we're going to make, we're going to use brown paper. you know the stuff. It comes, if you order anything from Amazon, you get this brown paper. You can use your brown paper bag that you get at the grocers if you have that option. And we're just going to crinkle it up repeatedly. We want all those, that interest. Okay. Now I'm just going to trim this off roughly around it. I will do a cleaner job in a bit. And I'm just putting a coat on top. And I'm going to dry this and I'll be back. So now to bring out the tones, you can use your distress ink. Now the thing about distress ink, I don't only have one color of brown. It's also going to become water activated. So I don't want to use this because if I put some other layer on it or I'm putting a label on it, I might do that. So what I could do, I just happen to have walnut stain in a distress crayon, and that, unless you move it if it gets wet, it's not going to reactivate. So I'm going to use that property to my advantage. I do that here because, again, it's probably what I'm going to do most of the time. I am going to use Liquitex Basics, and I'm going to use black acrylic paint. I don't have any brown, so I'm going to use that, and I'm going to rub, especially on the top of it, because I want that to look kind of aged and old, leathery look. And you can see how the crinkles are coming out. So I have some of this, and it's raw umber, and I'm just going to go again on the surface because my goal here is to make parts of it darker, so it's just going to make it rich. Now, can you paint on the brown paper? Absolutely. I'm not going to because I like using this to get that old leather antique look. You can get the effect without using brown paper, and your colors might come out a little bit more pure, so that you can use tissue paper. And we are going to use tissue paper and a few other products where you'll get a wrinkle effect. But each time I'm just going to try to get a different effect. You know, play with it and see, you know, what you're going to get. And as I'm doing this with this packing paper, I'm wondering the grocery bag, the paper bags that I get, it's a little thicker. I wonder what kind of effect that's going to have. So while this is drying, I'm actually going to go run and get one of those paper bags, because I think we're going to do the other side just to see, because I have a question, and Mixed Media Technique Tags is all about getting answers. So I'll be back. So I have a grocery bag, and you know, as expected, it's am way thicker, so I'm just going to cut this. And I'm going to crinkle it up in the same way. Now I'm thinking it's going to have different kind of crinkles, but we're going to see. It's harder to crinkle. Because it is quite thick. Okay, so I'm going to Mod Podge the other side of this tag. If you were putting or collaging and you were doing a turtle, this would be nice for the turtle shell or on some of the focal point. Remember, it doesn't have to be the entire background that just has this technique. It may just be one element of your page. Okay. It kind of got softer than the other paper, if that makes sense. On there, I'm just going to apply a couple colors of brown. Again, you can play with that, and there's nothing magical about any of the colors. You can really truly apply, whoops, any color. I'm really liking this. But you want to have something that's a little darker, that's going to catch on the very highest points. Kind of wishing I had these side by side, but I guess I will take pictures of them. So we have this, which is the brown paper bag, and this is the packaging. So you get a very different effect. I'm quite surprised, and I really like the brown paper bag. So those are definitely going to come out of the recycling bin and find a home in my art studio. I'm just going to dry this a little bit more, and then I'm going to come back and put a darker brown and then some black, a little bit of black. I am just in love with the look and the feel of this. It feels like leather, and an idea occurs to me, and I'm just going to share this. I think this would make a wonderful cover if you're doing an altered book like this one. I have some of my artwork in there. Wouldn't that make a lovely, lovely cover? You know, I think I'll put a layer of gesso on there and cover it up.
and get it all like beat up old leather. Ooh, I just love that. So now what I have is I've put some black on here, and I'm going to be very light-handed. Now you can use the palm pad of your finger to do this if you want, or just skimming. Just where you want it. And I got it a little dark, so because it's acrylic, you do have a little bit of play time to get it off. And then, of course, if this was just going to be a bookmark or a tag, I would edge it in black. So there's, you know, many ways. You can use a makeup sponge. I find it more difficult. Just there. Can you see that? Now, if I wanted to, I could go over this with a little bit of gold and it would bring it up. We've learned in other of the texture ones, if we apply gold, we can bring up the physical textures there to show it off if you use a darker color or even a lighter color. But for this purpose, I'll use dark and light with other ones. So this one, let's do the same. Now the ridges here are not as deep, not as pronounced at all. So I'm just being very, very, very light with this. You know, I just want to bump up that texture, just that smidge, and just finish this tag off. So we have this, and then, you know, just keep going till you're happy with what you see. So it is, oh, I love that. I just absolutely, it's, yeah, yum. And I might try different colors with it. You know, I might put a coat of white gesso on there and then try it with different colors just to get that lovely texture for other projects. Okay, so we're back with the product that we're going to use. Now this I found in my stash once upon a time, 25 years ago, 20 years. Yes, it was 20 years ago. I used this, and it's called Super Paper, and then there's a smaller version called Paper Twist. I used it to make paper angels and flowers, and it was one of the crafts that was in. And it just got stuck in the back of my craft room, and so I was deciding whether I wanted to bring it with me to my new home, or whether it was something that was just going to get tossed. So I discovered that it can create some lovely, lovely textures. And just this past Christmas, I did my plaid tidings with this on the background, and you can see the lovely texture that gives to a project. So I did Google it, Super Paper, Twisted Paper. I could not find it anywhere. I've looked in Michael's. But I'm pretty sure that you might have this in your stash from days gone by crafting, because we throw away nothing. And it may be at thrift stores or in garage sales. So keep your eye out, because so once you have it off the roll, you have to decide, since it does have the lines going this way, I could put it this way and my lines are going to go this way, or I could turn it and have the lines going that way. So you do have a little bit of leeway. I've never done it going up and down, so why not now? So it's already wrinkled. You can crinkle it more if that's what you want. You kind of want to keep it folded. So I always cut a little bit more so it allows for that to go together, so it doesn't get all stretched out, because you can make this flat. If you worked hard enough, you can totally make this flat when you add moisture to it, and we want the wrinkles. So I'm just going to apply gesso, and this time I'm using gesso as an adhesive, and I'm going to put it quite thick. This does mean it's going to take a long time to dry. And I'm going to apply a coat of it on top as well. So I'm just kind of pushing that down. I do not want, like I said, I want to keep these ridges that are there. I do not want them, and I'm choosing not to add more to it. And I'm just applying the gesso. Now the gesso, if you put sprays on this, watercolors, it's going to change the brightness of it. It's going to kind of dull it down a bit. So if that's something that you don't like, then by all means, don't use gesso, right? One person may like an effect, another person may not. So you need to find what works for you. There are times that I want the colors to be pure, and then there's going to be times that I want the colors to be muted. And this tag right here it kind of has that chalky look. That is because of the gesso. And I absolutely love, love, love how that turned out. This one right here, I used acrylic paint on it. I did not use the sprays. And there's a video showing how I did this. And then I used black and then gold to bring out that texture even more. And what I'm going to use on this, I'm going to use my Lindy sprays. I could also be using my Wilton homemade sprays, which are made out of the Wilton, and maybe I'll do a combo of those. And I love, love, love how it catches in the nooks and the crannies. So I'm just shaking these up, and I'm just going to apply them. I could drip them, I could open up the cap. Loving, loving, loving that color. Now I could use these in combination with acrylic paints. You could put anything on top of your textured surface. Any kind of paints that you have. And I'm just going to catch this in a and I find, just put it, and I'm going to dry it as goes, and you can see how it gets caught.
but any kind of spray, any kind of paint that you have, you can use to color these. So if you don't have a metallic, you know, you don't have Lindy Starburst, or you don't have that, you can just use, put your spray whatever color or paint whatever color and use metallic craft paint. Since the lines are going this way, I want to make sure that colors are also going that way. I don't want drips up and down. I could introduce other colors here, but you know, I'm just loving this as it is, so I'm happy. This would look very nice if you had this with material that you used with the skirt or the dress of the Prima dolls. You know, that would look like, it looks like material. So I can see myself, you know, stamping onto that, cutting it out, and then you paper piecing it as a dress, and it's going to look like, is that taffeta that looks like that? And you can, you know, add to this in any way you know, see. And I'm just loving people coming on to into the Facebook, my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media, and they're sharing what they did, their color combinations. You know, the sky's the limit. And I think when somebody does it, it's like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. And then we can do it and, you know, take that on. If I wanted to, I could take the black and bring that out even more, but I'm just loving it just the way it is. So that is going to make an interesting, lovely background. Now, you know, when you use these, they can be water activated, so you can get away with using gel medium on it and a gentle hand. But I'm going to have to remember, that's the joy of using acrylics, because they're permanent and you don't have to worry about having a problem later on. That's why pretty much all my techniques, I'm showing you an acrylic paint possibility. So I decided I need some gold in here because, you know, it's me. So I'm just using my Artist Loft gold. And I'm going to grab a makeup sponge. I could grab my blender and just ever so gentle. I'm going to zoom in here so you can hopefully see. This reminds me of an old wall. If you did this the color, you know, gray and stone color, it might be a wall background. Just ever so slight, and then I'm just going to edge it in gold. So if this was a bookmark for someone or a tag, you know, it's gilded. And quite often I will put, before I put gold, I'll put black underneath it. I just find it accentuates the gold. Just that little extra.
And there you can see just a gorgeous, gorgeous background. So whether you go horizontally or vertically, you know, here is another one that I did with gesso, and I just sprayed it, and it's just gorgeous. I just love, love, love it. And here is one that I did. I put it on with gel medium, and then I sprayed it, and I believe I put a little bit of gold on it. So again, you had very different effect based on the different colors that you use. So, you know, I mean, look at that. Gorgeous. So now we're going to do it with tissue paper. So I'm just going to grab a tag here, and you know, depending on your tissue paper, this is really soft. Often I put with the tissue paper, and I've done this on numerous of my backgrounds, I tend to put 2 layers to just double up the texture. So again, I'm just going to use Mod Podge, and my card is not gessoed, which is, you know, for me is the odd thing. And if I'm collaging and covering the whole thing with collage items, and I'll be gluing everything down, I tend not to. So again, you want to crinkle it up, make sure this is old recycled, and you want to accentuate those crinkles. Now you could, as we did in Mixed Media Technique tag number 1, you could have stamped on this too and then built in the texture. So for that one, some of us, you know, some people did add the texture, depending on how you lay it down. So you always have that option, you know, if you're going to, and I got pink all over me, so I'm going to wash up. So just going to put another layer. I'm not even going to dry because I want maximum amount of texture. I want all those nooks and crannies. So I'm going to give this a dry and trim it, and I'll be back. So on this tissue paper that I've glued down, I'm going to use my Dilutions paints. And the type of paint or the product that you use afterwards is totally up to you. I want to get kind of this ombre effect, so I'm using the green and the turquoise and the London blue. And I'm going to apply 1 layer, and then I'm going to come back after I dry and put another layer just to make sure that it is blended a little bit more. Now when you look at this up close, you can see if you turn it on the side that there's little bits of white there. If you like that effect, leave it. If you don't want that, depending on the color and what you're going for, you may have to use a brush and kind of get into those nooks and crannies with the color to get rid of the white. So that is up to you. So here I am edging it a little bit with the darkest color and reapplying it to get that blending effect. And then with the tissue paper, because it is so thin, you get very low profile. It's very close to the paper as opposed to the brown paper or something that's thicker. But you get this lovely fine texture, especially when you apply more than 1 layer. So you don't always have to put darker colors on. Here you see me very lightly skimming it with white Liquitex paint. And that just gives a completely different effect than if you were to put black on this. So
and any other color that you would choose to do. I could have used a dark blue on this as well. Kind of get a kind of a cobwebby kind of feel. I'm thinking this might look nice if you were doing a Halloween one. Not these colors per se, but the tissue paper technique underneath it. Remember, the colors and the medium that you're using on top of whatever you've collaged down to get the texture, that's secondary. That isn't really the technique. I'm just kind of showing you a little bit about how to finish it up to the next. But that's nice, light and airy. That could be branches in a tree. If I did those brown, it might be branches in a tree. So as you create this, you sometimes get inspired by the background. Now earlier when I did the brown paper bag one, and I loved it so much, and I said to myself, said out loud, I wonder what that would look like with color. And so my mind kept going. So what I did is I adhered it with the Mod Podge, and then I applied a layer of white gesso. Now the reason I'm putting the white gesso on is I don't want the brown as my base color. I want to put, whatever colors I want to put on there, I want them to be true colors. I don't want them to be muted because it's on brown. So this way, it's going to be true to color. So I just pulled out my Liquitex Basics, and I'm applying some of the purple color. And my intent here was to do kind of several shades of purple on here. And as soon as I put it down, I kind of changed that and decided that I'm going to put this lighter purple down, and then I'm going to use the darker purple to show the bumps, because where I brushed over top of it, it was looking really nicely. So again, midstream, Karen's changing her plan. So I'm just kind of wiping it off a little bit, and then just using the lighter lavenderish color for this. And I apologize, I seem to have problems keeping this in screen. I'm going to have to look more at my viewfinder when I'm videoing. So there is the texture, and I'm using the darker purple and just very lightly, ever so lightly brushing it across and picking up the high points. And I'm just loving that look. It just, oh, something about it just makes me happy. So I have the purple, and then because I'm me, and because there is no shimmer or shine on this tag yet, I decide that I'm going to use the silver. And I just have cheap dollar store silver paint. Works just fine, especially for this. It's that right consistency. And I'm putting it on the felt applicator and just brushing it on top. And quite often when I use gold or something, I often put a darker color underneath it. It just makes everything show up all the more. So depending on what your theme is for your page, for your card, that will affect which colors you choose to use for bumping up the texture. You may decide after you have figured out on the focal point what color you're going to rub onto the high points. So it's not something you have to do completely at the beginning before you add the focal point. So I'm going to say that we are done, because the sky is the limit. I mean, color combinations, papers that you have. So, look around your room, see the different kinds of texture, experiment with the different products. You can use coffee filters, you can use, like I said, the packing. Don't limit yourself to just one. As you can see, you get very, very different effects with different products that you have. Look in your craft stash, see what you have there that just might be able to be repurposed for something else. So thank you again for joining me. And now here are some close-ups of the tags that I created. This one is the paper bag, and there is a close-up of the luscious texture. This is the brown packaging material, and it's close-up. They all have wonderful texture, and every different paper is going to be different. This is that super paper or twist paper, and a close-up. This was with white tissue paper. I didn't mention it before, but you could also use pattern paper to get texture, and that will kind of lead towards vintage. Here is the brown paper bag with white gesso placed on it and a color. And here are some close-up of tags that I've done in the past. This is with the twist paper and sprays and gold to bring it out. This is with the sprays on, it was gessoed. This has silver applied to the burgundy just to show a different effect. And this has silver and black applied to a light background.